was a rumble in the jungle. Once I heard Dad was outside again counting birds, and Mama plugged in a nightlight, and I saw the queen of the world. Mama plugged in the
Welcome
nightlight,
to the Golden Hour Birth
and I saw the
Podcast. I am your
queen
co-host
of the
Liz,
world.
and I'm your co-host Natalie. And tonight we have a friend from Long Island, New York on. I think, right? Oh my
Yes.
Oh, I was like, did I already mess that up? But we have Katie from Long Island on. She is a mama of 3. So thanks so much for coming on tonight, Katie.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited about this.
So we can just go ahead and jump right into it. If you want to just tell us a little bit about you and your family.
Okay. Well, like you said, I'm a mom of 3. I have a girl and 2 boys. My daughter is 6. My middle one is 4. And the grand finale baby, he is 7 months. My husband and I have been together for 11 years, I think. We got married on 12, 13, 14, so we would never forget.
I love
And last year I forgot. But so we've been married for that long. And we got pregnant almost like right away. So we got married in December of 2013, and I was pregnant by August of 2015. We postponed our honeymoon because we wanted to do a cruise to Alaska. So I took my IUD out right before that cruise, and 6 weeks later I was pregnant.
Wow.
So I was fully expecting to need like fertility treatments and everything, in all honesty, because my mom, she had a hard time getting pregnant with me. I'm overweight, I've always had issues with my period and stuff. So I was fully expecting to need some sort of intervention. No, apparently. So I got pregnant immediately. And Harper is my daughter. We were team green for her. And then we found out for the 2 boys. And she is the baby who gave me the confidence that I could have a ton of them. And then my son came along and knocked me on my ass. And we were done at 2. And then I had gotten pregnant, and we had a termination for medical reasons early on in 2019. And that kind of made me realize, I'm like, I don't think we're done. And then in the pandemic, I got pregnant right at the start of it on my IUD. And then we ended up with a second trimester loss at almost 20 weeks. So we went through that in the height of the pandemic, August 2020, height of the pandemic. Like, I cried to the nurse to let my husband come to the hospital because, I mean, New York got hit bad. We got hit really bad. So we weren't as bad as like the city, but on Long Island, we got trampled. And I cried to the nurse to let my husband come in. And she was like, we have exceptions. This is one of those. So don't worry, he can come. And then after that, we were kind of like, well, maybe not. Maybe we're not. Maybe we are done. And then August of 2021, it was right before my daughter started kindergarten. I couldn't stop crying. And her first day of school, my husband was like, what is wrong with you? I was hysterical. I could not stop crying. And we were driving home, and we were going to Dunkin' Donuts, and my 4-year-old, well, at the time he was 3, he goes, Mommy, don't cry. It's just Dorothy. We're just getting Dorothy. And I'm like, okay, as I'm sobbing. We get home, and I was texting my best friend. She's like, well, you've been really, she's like, you were crying at the Alanis Morissette concert. Like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm just a mess. She's like, could you be pregnant? I'm like, no. And then she was like, well, you have like, cause when you have one, you just buy those cheapy tests from Amazon,
Exactly.
And she's like, go take one. And that was the grand finale, baby. So, and that's, my boys are Fox and Steven. And Fox he lives up to his name. And Steven he's only 7 months. So, but he's the wild card. He's the wild one. He came 6 weeks early.
Wow.
And my whole pregnancy, I was like, he's going to be the biggest baby. He's going to be the biggest baby. He was born the smallest one. But now at 7 months, he is the biggest baby. He is bigger than the other two were at 7 months by like a solid 2 pounds.
Wow.
And he's a little sack of potatoes. And so that's my family, the 3 of us, and the 3 kids, my husband, myself, and our dog, who you will probably hear at some point. She's so stupid. Stupid. But the kids love her and she's good with them. So that's all that matters.
Yeah. Family dogs and like having kids with them is just something special, but
it really is. It really is. And Harper picked her. Like Harper found her in the shelter.
Oh.
And we when we lost our first dog, Skipper, I was devastated. And we were like, we're not going to get a dog right away. And Harper was only like 10 months old, I want to say. She was a baby. Mm-hmm. But one of her first words was D for dog. Any dog, she would be D, D, and she'd like flap her hands. She loves dogs. So we went to the shelter and she found her in the corner, sitting there, and the hands started going, the legs started going. My husband was holding her and she's like, D, D, D. And then in the corner of this shelter, all the way in the corner, the dog is hiding. And that was that. Now we have Beasley.
That's so sweet.
She's very sweet, but she's so stupid. She's eating our house. She ate the air conditioner. She's eating our windows.
Wild girl.
That's it. I mean, all right, a mom with anxiety and everything gets a dog with anxiety. It's an age-old tale, it works. But that's really it. But she's a good girl. She's a good girl. So we're a family of 5 and the dog.
Love it. So how was pregnancy overall? Were they vastly different? Were they about the same?
The boys were the same. Mm-hmm. My first pregnancy was rough. I mean, those old wives' tales really had something with us. I knew it was a girl based on how sick I was. And I mean, when they say the girls steal your beauty or whatever, my face was spread. My nose has never been so big. My lips were swollen. I look like one of the Real Housewives. It was terrible. With Harper, I was sick, had I not figured out that I was pregnant so early, I found out I was a minute pregnant. My first symptom was that I didn't want coffee. And it smelled weird. It smelled off, and I was at a bridal shower. And I just kept going to my friend. I'm like, this place smells so old. Doesn't it smell old? And my friend is like, shut up. You're being a bitch. Because it was a friend's, it was my husband's friend's bridal shower. And I'm not really friendly with the girl, but that obligation thing. And she's like, you're being a bitch. Stop it. She's like, it doesn't smell old. The coffee's fine. Stop it. I'm like, no, it's gross in here. The next morning, I burped bile, which sounds disgusting. But then I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's never happened before. And I took the dollar store test, and the slightest little positive came up. And that was it. But had I not figured it out just by that, I would have figured it out when I started dry heaving in the grocery store in the chicken aisle. I grabbed one of those vegetable bags that they keep. So, you don't get chicken guts everywhere. I put one of those in because I thought I was going to throw up in the grocery store. But instead, I just dry heaved for 15 minutes and then wet myself. So I was 6 weeks pregnant, and I called my husband from the parking lot crying. I was like, I already wet myself and I'm barely pregnant. And he was like, it's all right. He's like, just come home. No big deal. He's like, no one's going to know. He's like, your leggings are black? And I was like, I know. But you can't tell a girl anything with that. At least and with her, I couldn't eat chicken. I couldn't even be in the same room as chicken. It was terrible.
Those are my aversions too. Coffee and chicken.
It was so bad. It was so bad. And my husband is allergic to pork. And all I wanted was bacon and sausage and pulled pork. all I could do. Like, so at work, every time I ordered lunch, it was a pulled pork quesadilla. It was delicious.
Support that.
Delicious. But it was a pulled pork quesadilla. And like he'd come home and there'd be leftovers in the fridge. He's like, "Is this chicken?" I was like, "Are you stupid? No, it's not chicken." He's like, "Well, what am I going to eat?" I said, "I don't know, but you figure it out yourself." I'm like, "I have my leftovers."
Not cooked chicken for you. Sorry.
And that's it. Couldn't even be in the house. It couldn't even be in the house. The way that my job found out I was pregnant was they ordered lunch and one of the girls got a chicken soup and I could just like, it like wafted to my desk and I started dry heaving.
Oh my God.
It was so bad. It was, and that lasted even after like I was done being pregnant with her. Like it lasted like, it was terrible.
Oh, wow.
It was terrible. But with the boys, it was, I didn't have the morning sickness like that. With Fox, I got a little bit sick, probably around like 12, 13 weeks. Same with Steven, but not for Harper. I would dry heave in the morning for a solid 20 minutes every morning. I couldn't brush my teeth. Like it was so, and it was like 26 weeks of that.
Oh.
And then I had a small break and then it picked back up at like 32 weeks. Yeah.
That's rough.
So that was, I mean, yeah, those old wives' tales, there's something to them. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. And with Harper, we didn't know. We did not find out if it was a boy or a girl until like she came out. And I knew. I said, I'm like, no, it's a girl. I'm like, it's a girl. I was like, I'm so sick and everything. And I was like, and then towards the end of the pregnancy, like pictures from my baby shower, my nose. I'm like, I remember looking at it and I was like, see, look at my nose. It's a girl. Like, look at it. I'm like, it's huge. And my husband's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, it's that old wives' tale. He's like, okay, it's like, all right. I'm like, no, it's a girl.
Yeah.
But
I still do that to my husband too. I think I have like some preeclampsia happening because my face like
that. Well, that's what ended. Like my doctor was like, he's like, no, he's like, that's a symptom of pre-E. And it was like, and I had already been being treated for like the pregnancy induced hypertension because I didn't meet all of the markers for pre-E at that point.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I'm like, no, girls, just steal your beauty. I'm like, no. And that didn't happen with my boys. And I had pre-E with all of my pregnancies. So I was like, say, but pre-E sucks. Pre-E sucks so bad. Like, I know people tell you, oh, well, all of this could happen, but it's only certain people or whatever. And then they're like, you can prevent it. You really can't. Because nobody tells you, for anybody who is listening, if you have pre-E or you develop pre-E, just know that it is not your fault.
Yeah.
No one tells you that because they're always like, oh, cut out salt or it's because you're overweight. Watch your weight. No, it's the placenta.
Yeah.
It is the placenta. And no one tells people that. Like, no one tells pregnant people this.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? So whatever someone is like, I have pre-E or my doctor's worried about my pre-E. Like, what can I do to stop it or anything? It's like, not much.
Yeah.
That's it. My mom had preeclampsia with me. And so there is a genetic component to it. But like, it took a long time to get over that, like that feeling of what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Until my second pregnancy, when I had a doula for my second pregnancy, she was like, it's the placenta. She's like, it's nothing you did. It's nothing you could really prevent or try and like manage or anything like that. She said, this is just how the placenta is. And I was like, and it's the same thing for gestational diabetes.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. And everybody was so shocked, including myself.
Yeah.
Just, again, those factors of my weight and everything like that. I fully expected to have gestational diabetes.
No. Yeah.
No.
That's not something that you can control. And then you see like people super healthy, like skinny little things and they've got it. And
Yeah.
it's definitely, people are always trying to like like I see on the mom boards, like, oh, I have my test tomorrow. What can I eat? And it's just like nothing. Like,
Nothing.
if you have it, you have it. There's
Yeah.
nothing.
That's
you know,
it. That's
all my
it.
doctor
And
told me was just like have some protein.
Yeah.
Like eat a nice protein before you come in. Then like, yeah, my girlfriend who's like due 2 weeks after me was like freaking out about her test. I think she had to like go in 3 hour, and I'm like, you know, that has like nothing to do with you, right? And she's
Yeah.
like, wait, what?
that's it.
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
you could walk every day. You could,
Yeah. Eat the healthiest
eat.
diet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bodybuilder that I follow on Instagram who was pregnant with her kid at the same time I was pregnant with Harper.
Mhm.
And she had gestational diabetes. And I just like, I'm like, a bodybuilder, like she did the fitness competitions and everything.
Yeah.
And she had gestational diabetes. So I was like, I kind of like the medical community and people, they always want to like fat shame the woman, or especially a pregnant woman. They always want to, you know, make sure you watch your weight. And of course, I'm not saying like, you know, it's a free for all by any means, but there is just a stigma of people who are overweight in the medical community in general. And then when you're a pregnant woman, pregnant human in this society right now, God, everybody just wants to tell you what to do and what not to do. And I'm just like, can I just grow a human? Like, can I just do this? Can I grow a human and make it to at least 34 weeks?
Yeah.
Like, like that was really it. With Harper, I ended up in the hospital at like 24 weeks for the hypertension. And I really thought I was delivering early. Like I truly thought I was going to have like a micro preemie at like 26 weeks,
Wow.
like 24, 26 weeks, because of the way that they were talking and just like the hospital doctors, not even my OB, because I had switched OBs halfway through my pregnancy because the original OB I had super alarmist and I didn't get that warm and fuzzy feeling. And then it was like, let me cancel the appointment. I was literally on my way to the doctors and they were like, oh, the doctor's not going to be in today. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I literally took off work to come here. I was like, so then I would cry and then they would get me in. I mean, magically, they would be able to get me in with somebody, but it switched. And I'm very kidding. I even said to my husband in the hospital, I said, had we not switched, I truly think that we would have had a baby at 26 weeks. Had we not switched OBs, I fully think that my initial group would have pushed to deliver me or like scared me into delivering early.
Have like a high blood pressure reading, or was there?
Yeah, I had high blood pressure reading and they immediately sent me to the hospital.
Wow.
And it was like the first high blood pressure reading. And like, I'm a ball of anxiety in general. And now I'm pregnant with my first baby. And now you're telling me something is wrong. So of course, now my blood pressure's spiking even more. And they sent me to the hospital for monitoring. And then I had a panic attack in the hospital. So that went over really well. The wonderful nurse, she was amazing. She was really a bright spot in like a dark place at this point. But I was like, I can't breathe. I'm like shouting. And she's like, if you're talking, you're breathing, I'll be right there. She came in, she held my chest for me. She's like, all right, ready, up and down, and she was phenomenal. And then my doctor came in and he held my hand. He's like, listen, you're not having a baby anytime soon. He's like, we're just going to monitor you. He's like, you might have to be here for a week or so. We'll see what happens. And then I had to pee in, the bucket for like 3 days. And then they sent me home on meds. And I was,
what pressure was?
I think that reading, it was like 160 over like 98. So like it was high. It was totally warranted. Yeah. It was absolutely warranted, and then like in the hospital, it calmed down and stuff. And then I had some pretty normal readings, like the 140 over 30, not 140 over 30. Oh my God, that's really bad. Like the 140 over 85, 140 over 90. And then it was controlled on meds. I was controlled, and then I was controlled on meds until I wasn't. And I'm just not meant to have a May baby because Harper's due date was May 1st. I was so excited to get an emerald as a birthstone.
Yeah.
And she came April 18th. Went in for my 38-week appointment. I was 38 in one day. And my blood pressure was high. It was like 150 over 90. My doctor was like, I don't like this. She was like, let's do another, and then like I was getting like the biophysical profiles every 2 weeks, and then it was every week, and then it went back to every 2 weeks. So I was always at my OB's office.
Yeah.
And she was like, let's just like check her out and everything. And then I had the extra fluid. I had the polyhydramnios. We were like, you know what? She was measuring huge. They were prepping me for this gigantic baby. And they were like, okay, the baby's measuring pretty big and everything. So I think it's going to be best that we look at delivering them. And I was like, okay. So I called my husband and I said, hey, we're going to have a baby. He's like, I know. I'm like, no. I'm like, no, like I'm coming home. We have to get the bag and we have to go to the hospital. And he's like, oh, you mean like now? I was like, yeah. He's like, did your water break? I said, no. The doctors just told me we have to go to the hospital. And he was so confused because my whole standpoint, my entire first pregnancy, you know, when you're brand new and naive and all of that, I was like, I'm going to go completely on my own, and I'm not going to be induced and I'm not going to do anything. And it's either going to be I'm going to go on my own or they're going to have to cut this baby out of me. Well, they cut the baby out because I did refuse an induction. I would not be induced, especially with the high blood pressure. I was like, no, absolutely not. That was like the one thing I was firm on with all three of my pregnancies, with all of everything. It was like, induction was not for me. Mm-hmm. And then especially once you have the high blood pressure the one time, each subsequent pregnancy, you're at risk for it again. So, you know, I was like, all right. I don't remember much of my first C-section. It went from being like super emergent to we have to get you in right now. My blood pressure spiked really high. They were worried I was going to stroke out. They came in, the anesthesiologist, he asked me about, because I have a morphine allergy, and one of the components of a spinal block is morphine. So he's like, well, how allergic are you? And I'm like, well, the last time I had it, they had to stop giving it to me because I immediately broke out into hives. I'm like, that was like 10 years ago. He was like, all right. He's like, well, we're going to give you a Benadryl first and then see what happens. Well, I broke out into hives and that sent me into a panic attack on the operating table. So then I was like, they were really monitoring my levels and like playing up and down with the meds and stuff. So I was not fully conscious for that birth. I remember hearing her cry. And I remember asking my husband, is it a boy or a girl? And then he said, it's a girl. And my response was, I told you so. And I was like, how big? How big is she? Because they prepped me for this gigantic baby. Yeah. Now, I'm 4'10". My husband is 6'7".
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So a giant baby was not out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah.
So they were like 6'11", 6'11". So I'm like 11 pounds? What? They were like, no, 6 pounds, 11 ounces. I'm like, are you sure? It's like, are you sure? And they were like, yeah. And apparently when you have the extra amniotic fluid, it can skew the sonogram even more than that 1 pound influx that they warn you about.
Yeah.
So that's where they got a big baby from.
Wow.
Yeah. Between that and her head measurement.
Yeah.
And
I was being told oh, he's measuring 2 weeks ahead. He's going to be so big.
Yeah.
He was 8'7".
It's a perfectly normal sized baby.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's a perfectly normal sized baby. Right. Like a big baby. But I will say if they were just going off of her head measurement, she got a big head. I'm super thankful for my C-section. Super. It's her. It's very proportionate to her. But it's a big head. It's got a big head. But
Did they, when you got admitted into the hospital, did they say that you had preeclampsia then, or did they
yes.
diagnose
So
later?
that's what ended up happening was when it like went from, I went in, they wouldn't let my husband in with me right away to like do my intake and stuff. So now I felt super uncomfortable.
Okay.
So my anxiety started going. And when you go in for your intake, you have to pee in the cup. And I tested positive for the protein in the urine. And then they ran the blood work also. And whatever those markers are in your blood work for pre that they look for, they were elevated. So they were like, it looks like this has turned into full-blown preeclampsia and everything like that. So I was like, okay. Oh, it's a baby. Okay, he went back down. He's in the living room. I've got some classical music going for him. And then my blood pressure, like the nurse, she refused to let my husband come in. And I started getting like very agitated and anxiety and all of that. And then my blood pressure spiked. And they didn't even wait to like for the spinal or anything to like put the catheter in me or anything. Like I had like nurses holding me down. They put the catheter in me and like wheeled me to the OR. Like it went from everything is fine to we have to get this baby out of you. It took a lot of healing for that first C-section. Like everyone was like, well, the baby's healthy and you're healthy. And I'm like, yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
But I'm like, that's a great story when you wrap it up in a bow, everyone's healthy, but they don't tell you how much that fourth trimester fucks with.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you have preeclampsia, you get the mag.
Mm-hmm.
And the magnesium is awful. Hot, you get itchy, and then they don't tell you that it can interfere with breastfeeding. And they don't tell you that preeclampsia itself on its own can interfere with breastfeeding. And then they just push the breastfeeding. And that's like a whole other, journey on its own. But it ended up being that I just don't have the boobs for a supply. Like they're for show. Like that's it. They don't produce the milk. The glandular tissue is not there. But that took a while to get to. So now it's like I'm battling the postpartum hormones. Yeah. And I'm navigating being a brand new mom. I just had major abdominal surgery. I can't get my tits to work. And everyone's like, oh, you have to do this. You have to do that. You have to do this. So, like people are telling me, oh, you can't use a nipple shield because if you use a nipple shield, she'll never bond with you. She'll only bond with plastic. Yeah, that was super helpful to tell me, 10 days postpartum. Thank you. Super helpful. And then going back and forth with the weight checks and everything like that. And then at 2 weeks old, she got admitted into the PICU because she wasn't gaining weight. So they labeled her failure to thrive. And that's when the nice lactation consultant at that hospital told me, some women just don't have the boobs for it. And I was like, okay. And she was like, and she's like, and she like examined me and like saw how like not symmetrical they are and how down to my knees they are and all this other stuff. And she was like, they're tubular and this, that, and the third. And she's like, yeah, your boobs are just for show. And I was like, it was just one of those things where it was like, she was so real about it. And I really appreciated her so much for that because it wasn't like, oh, honey, it's okay. Some women just go. She was just super like, hey, you know what? Your boobs are for show. That's what happens. Here's formula.
Yeah.
Ta-da. She wasn't like shamey about it like some lactation consultants that I had talked to were. Where it was like, oh, you just have to try harder. You just have to try harder. I'm like, okay, like, I don't. Am I supposed to like milk myself? Like, what do you mean try harder? Like, she's on my boob. She's latched. You're telling me she's got a good latch. What's the problem? But this one lactation consultant, she had answers. And I appreciate her so much for that. And knowing all of that going into my second pregnancy made it much easier. It just made it so much easier. And when I got pregnant with Fox, Harper was 14 months old. We weren't trying. We were doing that whole, well, if it happens, it happens. And again, I was expecting, all right, well, maybe we won't get so lucky this time. Right. People are like, oh, when are you going to have another baby? I don't know. Little did I know I was pregnant again. And my whole thing, I guess, is always being in denial of wanting to take a pregnancy test. Because, I've spent all this time, every time my period was a second late, it was, oh my God, I'm pregnant. Let me go take a test. And then when I actually was pregnant, I was like, no, there's no fucking way I'm pregnant. Married and everything, not trying, not preventing. No, there's no way. And I'm like, I totally could have been one of those people who are like, I didn't know I was pregnant. And so I get it. Like when I was younger, I never understood that show. And now I'm like, okay, I can kind of understand that.
Yeah.
I can kind of understand that. But
no morning sickness with.
No, with Fox, I had just a little bit at 12, 13 weeks. But had I not known I was pregnant at that time, I would have been like, all right, I have a stomach bug. It would have just totally gone over my head. And with him, I had no food aversions, the only thing I really craved was fresh fruit. I ate an entire papaya in one sitting. And my mom came over and she was like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's papaya. I'm like, how come I've never had this before? She was like, because you never ate fruit. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, but this is delicious. This is delicious. And that's all I wanted. My entire pregnancy, I wanted fresh fruit. There was at one point in my pregnancy where I had ulcers in my mouth from all of the pineapple I was eating because all I wanted was pineapple. And they were like, at one point my doctor was like, okay, you shouldn't really be eating this much pineapple because it can induce labor. And I was like,
there's an enzyme in it.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, good to know. Good to know. Another one of those, things that they don't tell you when you're pregnant.
Yeah.
If they don't tell you, you can have random nosebleeds.
Oh, yeah.
They don't tell you about that. They don't tell you about the random nosebleeds that can happen. Or your teeth, your gums will bleed and everything from all of the extra blood you're pumping and everything. Tell you all of that. Yeah, they tell you oh, your body's going to work overtime. They don't tell you the details. They don't tell you that you're going to have a stuffy nose for 9 months.
Yeah.
You're going to think
grew a half size bigger. Can't fit in my old shoes anymore.
No. With Harper and Fox, my feet shrunk back. With Stevens, my pregnancy with Steven changed my body the most. And I didn't with Harper, I dropped the baby weight basically right away. I gained 80 pounds with her. Most of it was fluid from the preeclampsia.
Yeah.
And I left the hospital at my pre-pregnancy weight. With Fox, I was back to my pre-pregnancy weight pretty quickly. Steven, I haven't lost a goddamn pound.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't lost a fucking pound. I actually think I gained 3 pounds since I've had him. And he changed my body the most.
Yeah.
He changed my body the most, but it's kind of fitting because he's the last baby. He's like, all right, well, I'm going to make this shit permanent.
I'm going to leave my mark on this body.
That's it. Man, did he leave a marker? I mean, if I had to pick the easiest pregnancy, it was probably Fox, which is kind of entertaining since I don't want to say he's my hardest kid. I don't want to say that. He is the kid who gives me the biggest run for my money. Is that a nice way of saying he's my most difficult kid?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, say middle child. I feel like that's almost enough.
That's it. I'm an only child. My husband is one of 3. He's the oldest. And I have a new understanding of his brother, the middle child, and I have way more sympathy for him now. And like part of me is like, that's why you are the way you are. I get it now. Get it. But, that's that second child energy. Like you see those TikToks with those sounds where it's like, my first child and it's like all angelic music and everything like that. And then my second child and it's like, fucking Metallica blasting in the background. I'm like, that tracks.
Yeah.
That tracks.
Yeah. My second is like no fear. Like, yeah. She's crazy.
It's that second child. I don't know what it is. And it's either like, regardless of if they're in the middle or just like the second born, he's my leash kid. He is. He's my leash kid. And I never thought I would be somebody who would have a leash kid. But
Shame parents being a parent now myself. I'm like, I feel like I get it.
yeah, get it. I get it. We were on vacation with my mom over the summer because my mom takes us on vacation as like part of our Christmas present. She takes me and my kids away, like little trips. But this year we went to Baltimore for the Baltimore Aquarium because they have dolphins there. And all Harper's wanted to do was see dolphins. Yeah. So Fox scaled the escalator. He scaled the side of it and he traveled up with it and on like a ledge and ended up at the top on the top floor, like, on like, I don't know, 8 inches of platform he had. Like all the guys from like the photo booth and customer service were like lined ready to catch him. I have never moved so fast in my entire life because all I did was go and like check the locker, see how much time we had left on our locker. And in that time, Fox decided he was going to scale the escalator. I have never been more terrified in my entire life. And also, like, people were just like, oh, like when we were finishing up in the aquarium, they were like, oh, that's the kid who ended up on the escalator. And it was like, he's the fucking escalator kid. And all that I kept going through in my head was the scene in Mallrats. Like, I don't know if you guys ever seen Mallrats, but it's, why are the kids always playing on the escalators? That is what was going through my head. So, the baby's up again. Hold on.
My little brother, to be honest, who was the youngest, like that's something he would be doing.
Let me just grab. Now I'm going to grab my youngest now because he's up now. My little baldy baby.
Was your birth with Fox?
The best thing I can say about it is that it was very healing. I remember way more of it. It was another situation where it was an emergency C-section, but it was non-emergency like Harper. Mm-hmm. I went for my 37-week appointment. It was 37 and 1. And my doctor was like, your blood pressure is high. And my blood pressure with Fox, I didn't have any issue the entire pregnancy until that day. And I was really not paying attention to my body at that. I mean, like, Harper was 20 months old at the time. So, I was running around. It was like just after all of the holidays and everything, but it was March 1st. And my whole thing was, my whole prep was like, the baby has to stay until March 1st. That was it. March 1st, he was due March 21st, March 22nd, something like that. And I was like, he just can't come in February. There are too many February birthdays. My best friend, my mom, my mom is like, that is February 28th. Like, too many February birthdays. So I was like, March 1st, it was a Thursday. And that weekend, they were predicting that it was going to be a blizzard.
Oh, no.
It was also, my husband had just gotten a promotion at work. So it was like going to be his first full week of being in this new position. And I said, I'm having a baby this weekend. And that's what that means. It was also a full moon.
Oh, yeah.
It was also a full moon. I was like, I'm having a baby. Blizzard, new job, and full moon. I'm having a baby this weekend.
A trifecta.
So that morning, the Thursday morning, my appointment, I was like, I had a migraine. I was yelling at my husband. I'm like, stop being so loud. And he was like, oh my God. He's like, I'm not. I'm like, no. I'm like, yeah. We went and my doctor was like, your blood pressure is pretty high. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he's like, your blood pressure is high. He's like, have you been having headaches a lot lately? And I was like, no, not really. And my husband just stared at me. He's like, really? I'm like, what? I'm like, it's just this morning. I'm like, because you're so fucking loud. And then my doctor looked at me and he's like, so I think we're going to have to send you to the hospital. And I was like right now? I was like, or can I go home, relax, like maybe take a shower. He's like, go home, take a shower. He's like, just let me know when you're on your way. So I called my doula. She came over. She like gave me a massage, calmed me down and everything. I went to the hospital. They did everything, admitted me. And originally I had said I would like a VBAC. And my OB was like, I'll tell you what, if you're dilated at all, or if your cervix is like good to go, he's like, we'll consider a soft induction. And at that point, I was like, all right, you know what? That I could do. No Pitocin, just, the Cervidil, the balloon, that kind of thing, just to see if we can get my body to go on its own. They did the exam and he was like, you're Fort Knox. Nope. He's like, let's schedule this shit. And I was like, all right. I was like, all right. But they kept having to bump me in the schedule for the OR because other people came in more emergent than me. So I was like, all right, that made me feel a little bit good because like with my first birth, I was the one who made people get bumped.
Yeah.
And I went in. I remember the nurse, my labor and delivery nurse who like got me on the table and everything. She had the best false eyelashes. Like, I just remember talking to her about them. I'm like, they look so good. I was like, they're so full. I was like, I only ever wore them for my wedding. I'm like, I can't believe you're wearing them all the time. She's like, yeah. She's like, because she's like, I don't have eyelashes really. She's like, you can't see them. She was the sweetest thing. At that hospital, it's a teaching hospital. So the anesthesiologist was like, here he's, he wasn't a med student, but he was, like an intern or whatever. He had to learn. So they were like, all right. And I just remember I remember feeling everything because with that C-section, they were able to take out the morphine component. So they gave me the spinal block without the morphine, but also gave me an epidural to help keep the pain meds in longer. Mm-hmm. That way, I didn't have any issues on the table in the middle of my section. So I was like, okay, cool. Science has evolved in just, less than 2 years, basically.
Yeah.
But I remember feeling the needle, I felt it in my teeth is the only way I could, because he hit my spine and I could feel it.
Oh my.
And it was just one of those things. I was like, whoa. And he's like, are you okay? And I was like, I felt it in my teeth. And he's like, what? I was like, I'm like, have you ever scraped a spoon on your teeth? And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah. Yeah. I was like, just don't do that again. And they ended up getting it. I remember my C-section more with him. We have videos, I was holding him, well, sort of, because, they tape you down when you have a C-section and stuff. And we have videos of hi, Harper, this is your baby brother, Fox. He's so excited to meet you. And then they wheeled me into recovery and I got up to my room. I took a nap and I woke up and I didn't have a baby next to me. Ended up, he needed to be into the NICU because when he came out, another thing they don't tell you is that when you have a C-section, the babies don't always get that last thing that they need to expel all of the fluid from their lung.
Yeah.
Since Fox didn't have that, but he was crying so hard and so loud, I guess they didn't feel the need to suction him as much as they should have. So he was having some issues with his lungs. So he ended up in the NICU for a couple of days.
They didn't wake you up though?
They did not wake me up. They just, they took the baby. I guess it was one of those situations where it was like, they didn't want to wake up the woman who just had major surgery and like terrify her. But it was like also kind of terrifying to wake up. And then I see the baby nurse like just standing over me. And I'm like, where's my baby? And she was like, okay. She's like, we had to take him to the NICU. And I was like, what? Like, I feel like there's no good way to do it, I guess, but they had to monitor him more than it was really like, sorry, but the baby's health, fuck your feelings at this point. But that was the good thing is that Harper got to meet him before he went into the NICU, because had she not been able to be there, she wouldn't have met him until we got home. And, she was little, so she didn't quite really like understand like if mommy came home, but a baby didn't, like what's happening here.
Yeah.
But luckily he only needed like 3 days in there. And since I had the C-section and the preeclampsia situation, I was able to stay for the whole time. The doctor was like, no, we'll monitor you. We can keep you. So they kept me. So we all came home together. And then the blizzard happened. So the blizzard pushed back about 3 days. And then with him, I had postpartum pre. I had it. My blood pressure just would not go back to normal. Yeah, I know.
Were you having any symptoms when you got home, or were
no symptoms? And that was part of the issue, is that aside from like that one time with the headaches with Fox at like that last appointment, I was not having symptoms. I was not having the floaters in the eyes. I wasn't having the blinding migraines. I wasn't having, with Harper, I had like the swollen ankles, but that can happen with any pregnancy. So like nothing that my body was doing was like, hey, something's wrong. Yeah. It wasn't doing that. And that was part of the problem, because like all these doctors are telling me like, I'm high risk. I'm this, that, the third, like we got to get you in right away. And I felt fine. And the same thing happened with Steven. It was like with Steven, my pregnancy was hard.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We'll have Katie's part 2 on next week's episode, and she'll tell us all about her pregnancy and birth with Steven, as well as go into a little bit of the postpartum and some of the losses that she dealt with during that time period. So special thanks to Katie for being so vulnerable and telling us her stories this week. And if you want to connect with Katie, we'll link her Instagram in the show notes, as well as our own if you would like to follow us on Instagram as well. So thank you, and we'll see you next week. And don't forget to rate and review us, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.